You're listening to Garibaldi Red, a Nottingham Forest podcast brought to you by Nottinghamshire Live. Hello, welcome to Garibaldi Red as we reflect on a weekend when Nottingham Forest were beaten once again, this time 1-0 by Wolves in a game with 2 penalties. So joining me to discuss that and look ahead to tomorrow's game at Brighton, I'm joined first of all by an elite level podcaster and Neil Warnock's new best friend in David Prutton. Prutz, how are you?
Good, thank you very much. I'm very well. How are you?
I'm very well. I should put that in context and give you a free plug for your new podcast with Mr. Warnock. Do you want to tell people about it very quickly?
I'm sure we'll delight people that have got differing opinions about him. Yeah, it's chatting about anything, not anything, everything. That sounds a bit vague. Getting guests on, getting his unique perspective on the footballing world, given 40 years in management.
And what's it called?
It's called Die for 3 Points, which is part of a rant that he was very, very famous for. And if you've not seen it, it's very funny.
Yes, our famed Twitter account comes out every Saturday, I think, doesn't it? You've got to die for 3 points. Second guest today does not have any podcast of his own, thankfully, so he's free to help us out as much as he can in Michael Temple. Temps, how are you?
I'm getting a bit annoyed with Brooks because he was a better footballer than me. I went to university, studied media, but he's got a better media job than me. And now he's 6 places ahead of us in the podcast charts. So just one of those boys, isn't he? Just turns his hand to anything and just grabs
but Temps, come on, your hair looks immaculate, mate, and you look like a very composed and collected individual. Because my inner turmoil is not worth discussing.
Too kind.
Let's get into the football then. As we say, Forest beaten 1-0 by Wolves. They scored a penalty. Forest missed their penalty. Both decided by VAR. Temps, you watched the whole game. Just overall general thoughts on how Forest looked?
Are we going to talk about the penalties later? Because I suppose it is a tale of those, isn't it? And as a football fan, I don't think I want to see either of those penalties given. Traore's laced that ball at Toffolo. I think it was about 0.17 seconds between leaving his left peg and striking Toffolo's arm. And for me, there's nobody can react to that. But you watch it in super slow-mo from the perfect angle 12 times, and you probably do have to give the penalty. And then at the other end, Yatesy's having a tussle, isn't he? He's giving and getting in equal measure, and that one's given in our favour. But just putting my status as a Forest supporter to one side for a second, I don't think I want to see either of those given. I think without VAR, neither of them are given. And in a period like we're having, where we need everything to go our way to nick points, it's counted against us on this occasion. So yeah, Forest look quite blunt going forward at the minute. It's going to be a big problem as we try to change our fortunes.
What did you think about the first one then, Prutz? Because in the ground, there wasn't even a whimper of an appeal, and then it gets given. Is it just one of those, the rules are the problem rather than, well, I don't know, the execution of them in a sense?
I think Temps is right, because having watched it in real time and then watched it back in varying speeds, then by the time you get to that 6th, 7th, 8th view of it, Temps is absolutely right. You can then see why it's given. But that, again, flies in the face of what VAR is for, because if you need 8 attempts to look at it, then that's not clear and obvious, is it? The fact that the ball is smashed pretty powerfully toward goal means that you can't get out of the way. If there is a minute, and I mean minute, shimmy of an arm, that's purely instinctive. But again, you only see that several frames down the different replays that you watch. So I think it's a tough one for Forest to take, especially when, like we've said, they're in this position now where the tiniest little slice of luck needs to go their way because of how tough it's been so far being back in the Premier League. And as for the one down the other end, it was bizarre, because when you see it kind of broken down, you look at the first bit with Ryan, and then you look at Adama Traore behind him. We're almost drawn now to different things when it comes to, instead of it just being a contact sport like Temp says, where things happen in the 18-yard box and people get up and get on with it. There might be a throwing of the arms to the referee, but you break that down. And I was even listening to the commentary where they were talking about the Yates thing, then it's like, oh, but look, there's also a possibility of a handball. It's like, what else can we look at? You know what I mean? Does someone fall over the edge of the 18-yard box? So it's so I can understand the frustration with it. I think let's not debate VAR, but I think by and large, I've not minded VAR being used, but once again, it's the subjective element being put towards what people believe to be finite laws of the games when they're not necessarily are they? So again, going back to Temps's point, where if you need to look at it that many times, it's not then doing what it's there for.
I mean, I was listening to it on 5 Live. I was on the way back from my daughter's birthday party, expensive weekend, and they were discussing. They were moaning about the first one for the internal weight, which is another problem with VAR.
Ridiculous, yeah.
And the second one, the whole discussion was around, was it handball? And they were like, oh, actually, it's been given because of Ryan Yates being fouled. So it does show the problems. I mean, I thought in the context of the game as it is today, they were both penalties, but neither one should be in a way. It's just how the game is right now, and that's probably the bigger problem. Talk about Brennan's penalty. He's getting a lot of flack for it. It wasn't a bad penalty, was it, Thames? I thought it was more one where you give the keeper the credit.
Give the keeper the credit, because I watched it back thinking he might have strayed off his line, but he didn't. His technique as a keeper is really good. Kept 1 foot planted, firm step as Brennan approached, and he telegraphed it well. If you're being hypercritical of what Brennan did, he didn't look altogether composed in his run up. He ran around it, and then as he planted his foot, his body was so open. I think the keeper could read the corner in which he was going. It was maybe a yard inside the post, so he didn't quite find the corner. But since that daft penalty a few weeks ago, he has looked far more composed, hasn't he? He's gone side foot with power. I think he needs to disguise it a bit better, particularly if he's opening his body up and he's going to go right hand side. That is the easy one for the keeper to read. And running around the ball on the run up does limit your options, makes it harder to go either way, makes it harder to change your mind last minute. And if you watch, for me, Harry Kane's technique is unbelievably good because he can go both sides. His method and technique is almost identical regardless of which side he's going to go. And whilst Brennan has got into a better mentality, no more dinks down the middle, we'll never see that again. He just needs to disguise it a little bit more, particularly if he's going to open up his body.
I mean, is that fair, Prutz? I know you weren't a penalty taker, but you're a better footballer than we were.
No, but I can't disagree with anything that Temps has said there. Is done. This sounds condescending, and it's not. But to break it down like that is absolutely correct. That's the technical aspect of it. I think the thing, obviously, using the Harry Kane example as an example, is the mentality side of it, which is something that you can't really look at and judge from Brennan's point of view, really, can you? With regards to the confidence that's needed to step up and take a penalty, whether that particular game is going your way when you do get that penalty. Put it into context of perhaps a little bit of flack that he's been getting with regards to people looking at him going, well, he is one of these star men. And it's 10 games into his Premier League career. Christ, like, it's going to take time for him to adapt, as it is doing for a lot of the players in the Forest side, as it is doing for the management and the hierarchy, which we'll come into in due course. But I think, Temps is absolutely right with regards to that particular technique. And again, it was like you said, Matt, it was not something I ever had the chance to do, nor would I ever be given the chance to do, let's be honest. But it's a tough one, especially given as well, in a game such as that, where over the course of the piece, Forest start banging on Wolves' door, chance after chance after chance after chance, are they by any stretch of the imagination? So that then becomes an even more important kick of a ball in a football match where you are against a side that is in and around the same types of positions, and you need to claw the points away from those types of rivals.
I mean, there's two debates around Brennan I want to get both of your takes on. One's around his form and one's around his effort. And I really reject this kind of notion that he's not trying, which seems to be being more and more pervasive on Twitter. He doesn't look interested. His body language is terrible. I just can't get on board with that at all. Prutz, surely a lad who's come through the system, it's his hometown club. He might not be playing well, but he's putting everything in and more, isn't he? Maybe he's even trying too hard and putting too much pressure on himself, perhaps.
Yeah, I mean, there was even a burst in the last. I think it was in added time, wasn't it? Where he showed his fitness levels, he showed his capacity to carry a football. I don't know. Sometimes things like this, as we've discussed in the past, Matt, can gain traction on Twitter. I mean, it's as inevitable as death and taxes, isn't it? Dickheads on Twitter. So I don't think it's a wonderful platform for discourse and debate. I absolutely understand that, but it's also a great place to start off stuff like this, which and take out of the equation Brennan's history with a football club and his dad and how well liked and how well respected he is. He's an international footballer going to the World Cup. Why would you be tossing games off? I'm like that. If you try to break it, I understand there is sometimes an element of a projection of the way footballers are when a team is struggling. I absolutely get that. And it comes with the territory. It comes with the exposure. It comes with the money. And sorry, modern footballers, you've just got to get on with that. That's the stick you're always going to get beaten with when things aren't going great. But you're well remunerated, so shut up and get on with it. But I think that the finger getting pointed at the lack of effort. There's some players that you may come across like that in your career, as we are when it comes to commenting on football. But I don't think Brennan Johnson, for him as the standards that he's set by himself, nor knowing the people around him, would settle for at all.
I guess form's a different question, Temps. A lot of people saying he should be left out, which is a valid argument. I suppose my question would be who for in that sense, because no one's putting their hand up, are they, in those front positions?
It's not necessarily form, is it? It's development and the pace of his development. And Pruss is just there 10 games into his Premier League career. Chris Hooton had written him off a couple of years ago as a championship player, and look at him now. With the back four, there's more work demanded of him now. He does have to track more and come deeper to get the ball in. We can all see that he is doing that. But as the game goes up, particularly when we're behind, he's going to take risks. So there's going to be times when he's going to try and pin their fullback or hang in space, or be the outlet for the counter. And we saw that. But the analysis on match today was interesting, wasn't it? Because it pointed out how there are instances where those around him aren't necessarily doing the right thing. And there are instances where he's not reacting to certain triggers in the game that more experienced Premier League players would. The example was made of Emmanuel Dennis's run into space, Brennan running down the alley, turning around and dropping it off with the fullback. There was another one where he tacked off the right and he had Koyate at the edge of the box screaming for it, and he belted his shot in through players, and it was blocked and the chance went away. But he's seen this analysis too, and he's having this pointed out probably right now as we speak, as to look back at the video and analyse the bits that he can do to improve himself. But last year, when I think his record was 18 goals and 10 assists, he was the better player in one-on-one situations. So he was mincing fullbacks. He was going inside, outside, getting to the byline, cutting it back. His finishing was deadly. And when he was through on goal, he was cruising away from players. He's coming up against a far better calibre of opposition now, and he will get there. 21-year-old lad has played 10 games of Premier League football. And Prutz will know this. I'm sure your first 10 games were markedly different to your 110th game in the Premier League, when you just felt altogether more comfortable and you'd worked out the things that work for you and the things that don't. So I think Brennan's learning, developing at pace. He definitely has the ability to live at this level. And if we're going to take the question on how do you get the best out of him, should he come out of the team for a period of time, only if there's a better option. If we think that there's some combination of Gibbs White, Lingard, Awani, Dennis that gives us a better chance of winning a game than with Brennan in, then fine, take him out for a game or two, see what impact he can make from the bench. But even if we do that, he'll be back in the side because his class will tell. He'll get stronger. He'll get more adept at unlocking Premier League defences, and we'll reflect on this period in a few months' time, or maybe in a couple of seasons' time, and see what he's become and the hard yards that he had to go through and the disappointing performances and results that he had to go through to get there. But no one should write Brennan Johnson off, and I'm certainly not.
It's the point they make there, Temps, is absolutely right, because it's a learning curve in full glare of everyone that's got an opinion. And it's, you mentioned about me, Christ, 20 years ago, it's different. It's miles different. The Premier League's like light years better than it was. So people are looking at Wolves not doing very well. It's still a team that's been in the Premier League and kind of is a bit more battle hardened to what that challenge is. And I think he'll be better for this. I think that's the positive that you've got to put on it. He'll be stronger for working his way through this. I've got no doubt that he will. That he will work his way through it because of the type of player and the person that he is. Morgan Gibbs White, a fantastically creative footballer, probably being asked to double up on Traore. You know what I mean? It's the mindset at this moment in time with Forest is containment rather than creativity. And I absolutely get that, because you look at where they are. And it's got to be incremental gains. 3 points is great. 3 points is great, but a point here and there, just keep the tally ticking over will help them get towards where the safety needs to be. But I think that development of players and how it was something that we've seen in 2 instances with Forest. You saw Matty Cash move on, and then Joe Lolly become less effective as a Forest player. Jed's obviously moved on, but it's a different level. They've moved on, and Jed and Brennan together were fantastic. And I think as a Premier League side of that pitch would have given it a good go so far. Things happen in football. Contracts are struck, deals are done, so players move on. So then you look at this huge influx of players that have come in, and Brennan standing out as he did, Temps, as you're absolutely right, in the Championship as one of the shining lights, has now just gone to show just how tough the Premier League, and it's amazing. It amazes me because, like where we get the chance to talk about this, and all the different platforms that judgment can be passed and opinion can be given, and the reason that it is such a massive global sport is because people care about it. People are properly bothered about what football is, but it also means that there can be a very bizarre opinion about the Championship and the Premier League, and an underestimation, obviously, of how unbelievably tough it is. It's the top tiny percentage of the top 1% that get to play in the Premier League, even more so nowadays. You look at the Liverpool Man City game yesterday, you look at Darwin Nunez, when you're talking about a player for 85 million quid, still making the wrong decisions. You know what I mean? So if he's capable of making the wrong decisions at 85 million pounds, then 21-year-old Brennan Johnson that cost Nottingham Forest absolutely nothing and is 10 games into that with a smattering of international appearances, maybe just give him the benefit of the doubt that he's got to learn, because he's got to learn on the job. And going back to your point, Matt, yeah, get him out of the team if there's a better option. Is there a better option right now? No. He's got to work his way through it.
So when you went to Southampton, casting your mind back, did you have some kind of imposter syndrome when you went in there? You're walking out on the pitch those first few games. Do you think I don't belong here or not? I know everyone's different. I just wonder if Brennan has that.
No, I don't think Brennan does. I think the kind of unerring confidence that he's got has showed itself not only domestically but internationally as well. The first thing that I noticed was in training. Even training, you kind of, and we were a good, hard-working Forest team with good young players in, but you'd go into training and there'd be people that you'd never heard of that were I mean, you chase them down, trying to, I'll do my usual thing, run around and kick people. Couldn't get anywhere near them. You do like the keep ball session at the start of the game, at the start of training, where you had the circle and 2 in the middle. Spent about 6 months in the middle of that, knackered, going, jeez, like, what? Can you give me a breath? And it was as much a test, like a peer pressure test, as it was a test of yourself mentally. And then after that, you've just got to put your big boy pants on and get cracking with what your job is. Your job is to perform. Your job is to take heed from other people. But then the difference is with regards to what Brennan's feeling and experience and the difference possibly with mine. I went into like an established Premier League team that was full of established, battle-hardened pros and older pros, and you had to sink or you had to swim or you'd sink. Whereas this team that's come together up through with Forest is a team that's doing this for the first time, isn't it? There's a couple with a smattering of a suggestion of a Premier League experience, but a lot of them it's for the first time, and they're doing it together, and they're all learning on the job. And I'm sorry, but this is just what happens when you are one of the star players. People look at you, and it comes with the territory. I don't need to tell Brennan that, because I'm sure his dad's warned him of the pitfalls and the perils of it. But like I said, on the other side of it, it's a glorious lifestyle and it's a glorious profession to be in. But unfortunately, when things aren't going great, oh, you got 18 last season. Why haven't you got 10 assists already? Well, have you seen the defenders? Have you seen how physically big these players are? Have you seen how quick they are? Have you seen who we're playing against? It will not be easy. And it goes back to what all three of us have discussed. Anything above the dotted line this season for Forest is absolutely party time. Anything above the dotted line is unmitigated success for them. And I'm sorry if that sounds a little bit defeatist, but that's got to be the case.
True. And just on the game itself, before we start moving on, Temps, it sounded like I didn't see it for family reasons, but it sounded very much like the Villa game. And if Forest had scored that penalty and taken that point, we've probably been all right with it. But if you're a bit toothless in attack and you lose, then you're pretty, everyone's pretty negative coming out of it, aren't they?
Well, look, there were ways within that game that Forest could have come out with 3 points. Traore had a lot of the ball, didn't necessarily have any production at the end of it, aside from winning that penalty first half. But they obviously felt they had a bit of a mismatch there and were feeding him with long diags, getting into his feet. He was running from depth. His crosses went awry. Fast forward to the second half, that Yatesy header again in the Premier League. A lot of the dominant central midfielders would probably finish that chance. So it wasn't a hapless performance. I think that the defensive solidity is improving. I think we're now seeing that the back four is here to stay, and there are some shoots of that becoming a more solid base from which to grow. But we need to crack this piece in the final third, and it was evident in the two best chances that we had, the penalty and Yatesy's header. Better finishing could have changed that result, bought us a point or even 3. So it wasn't a hapless, abject performance, but nor does it give you great hope. We need that result, that thing that's going to spark it, that thing that's going to make the boys realise, I do belong here. I can cope at this level, because they perhaps feel a bit down on the luck at the minute, in the sense that those moments in games aren't quite going their way, both individually and collectively. But I think we're getting closer to knowing what the team is. We need someone to stick their hand up now in an attacking sense, bag a couple, make a couple, whatever, and drag us up by the bootstraps, and hopefully that starts against Brighton. But it wasn't a hapless performance. There are ways and means within that performance that we could have got points from Molineux.
Before we talk about Brighton and how they maybe tweak one or two things to get that result, I wanted to touch on the absolute pre-match shambles around the social media graphic. I'm sure everyone knows it, but I'll just tell you what it was. Forest put out a graphic of Emmanuel Dennis sat on the pitch with some little wolf cubs saying playtime. Forest proceeded to lose the game, and Wolves' social media team quite reasonably put out a graphic of chopping down a tree saying playtime's over, with the icing on the humble pie, if that works, of safe journey back to Notts Forest, just to really rub it in. It was picked up all
Notts
over
as well.
Yeah.
Oh, God.
It's picked up all over the media. It's mentioned on Match of the Day. It was embarrassing. I mean, for context, Temps, you were head of comms at Trent Bridge, and now still work there in a high position. My day job is social media, posting links and graphics and analysing how they're received. So I think we're well enough place to comment, but I don't think we need to be experts in the industry to give an opinion on it, and we'll get yours as well, Prutz. But Temps, first of all, pretty obvious what was going to happen there, wasn't it?
It's not something you do when you're second bottom of the Premier League. Maybe in the opposite sense, if you were going into a game where you were the overwhelming favourite, I still wouldn't do it, because you're setting yourself up for a fall. And what you've seen from Wolves is a riposte from a position of strength when they've won the game, and that's what's getting talked about now, how they've won that battle of social media. So no, it's not something that I would have done. I had a fair few Twitter faux pas in my days as a press officer, as a Notts press officer. We broke the news of Freddie Flintoff coming back out of retirement for Lancashire, which they subsequently denied, and then he played against us on the Friday. So there are ways and means, have a bit of fun, have a bit of a jostle, pull people around a bit. But I think when you're on a winless streak, going to a team that have established themselves in the Premier League, you're just poking the bear. And I don't think for a second it was pinned up on the wall and the Wolves boys were in any way motivated or saw it. They couldn't have cared less, I'm sure. But it's no, I wouldn't have done that from that position.
Yeah, afterwards Neves posted about it and Steve Davis mentioned it. I was going to get your take on it, Prutz. Would that wind you up? Or is it just a bit juvenile and players couldn't give a toss what the pre-opposition press people say?
I think knowing the kind of gist of what the Forest dressing room is like, it would have annoyed them more, basically, because they're getting pelters for performances. Sorry, more results, obviously, than performances. So to exacerbate that by doing something, because it's, as Temp says, it's silly, it's daft. It would be put under the term, the B word of banter, wouldn't it? Which means, God, so many different eggy things. And we can get all a bit serious and a bit offended by little things like this. And I'm not saying that should be the case. You just look at it and you go, really, where we are. Like, it's just, I don't mean come into the Premier League and doff your cap to everyone and just be the new boys who sit in the corner quietly. No, get on with your job. It's tough enough as it is. Just don't kind of stick your head above the parapet with some daft post like that, because it was only ever going to... As soon as you see that, as a Forest fan, you're thinking, oh, God, should I even drive to Molineux now? Because I know what's going to happen. Because the gods of football that see stuff like this and go, oh, unlucky, it's not going to be your day today. Just kind of see that and smiles and laugh straight away, don't they? So I would file it under unhelpful, and then with an asterisk saying must do better.
I think you're right. If the social media team flash that to the WhatsApp group or Cooper's mobile on the Saturday morning and say, "What do you think, Gaffer?" He just says, "No,
definitely not." Yeah, I could see Coops just looking at it going, "Does this need an answer?"
Oh dear. Let's move on then. We've file under unhelpful, as Prut said, and move on to Brighton and see if Forest can get a result. Temps, I mean, we've sort of touched on this already. Do they just need a couple of minor changes? I'm thinking maybe Mangala in for Koyate, that kind of thing, to be a little bit more expansive at Brighton, maybe?
Yeah, Mangala for Koyate would be the change for me. I think he can live with the level. He can do a lot of the stuff that Koyate can do. He also just seems to have that little bit more poise on the ball, and he can play that slightly more complicated pass between the lines. There was a nice couple of links that wasn't there with Freuler when he came on Saturday, and you can just see that he's got a certain composure about him, and he's in his prime. Koyate has had far more minutes than I thought, and there's been flashes where you can see why he's being picked, because he'd be great in that game of Rondo in training Pruts. He's everywhere, isn't he? In his anticipation.
Rondo, is that what it's called?
That's what they call it at Real Madrid. I'm not sure they call it at Southampton.
No, I think it was just called keep Pruts in the middle at Southampton.
So yeah, I think that's a potential change. But for me, the way you beat Brighton is to be, again, a bit more in their face. And you're going to have this example, aren't you, of Brentford having done them with 30% possession. But I hope we're not going to have a regret mid-season, end of season about being so passive out of possession. So I do hope we can find a way to force it a little bit. And I look, they're a good side, well established. They beat Man United when they were in disarray and at the start of the season put them to the sword. And again, they're a team that can exploit weakness, and they'll be coming into this game with ice in their veins, thinking they can pick us off. And we've got to spring some kind of surprise. I think that team selection is key. I think that'll show us the intent. If there's not any marked change to the 11, then we are going to sit deep and compact and contain and look to spring on the counter. But if that's the plan, we need to find a way to convert more in the final third. And yeah, Brennan needs a bit of a video session between now and then, because in the way we're playing at the minute, we're not getting the best out of Emmanuel Dennis. Awani's been taken out of the spotlight for a little while. Lingard's waiting in the wings. I think Gibbs White has perhaps been the most complete attacking player. Looks very comfortable on the ball. He's backing himself with the pace to get on the outside. He's also checking and coming in and playing those direct passes to the edge of the box, looking for the return. He's played some nice through balls as well, hasn't he? He's certainly been the most penetrative. I can't even say it. He's been the most.
We know what you mean, Tim.
You know what I mean. He's just been direct, hasn't he? He's got the ball and he's always looked to make something happen. He's not the one turning around, dropping it off to the fullback. He's taken risk for the ball, and I think he's made himself undroppable at this point. We need to change the mix around him a little bit if we're going to play the same system against Brighton, but want to get a better result than we did at Wolves.
Yeah, I mean, as mentioned, Brentford beat Brighton with 30% possession at home, but they've got Ivan Toney up front, who doesn't need 3 chances and can bury a penalty, every time it comes to him. So maybe slightly different kettle of fish. I mean, how would you like to see Forest go about it at Brighton? They're obviously a good side under new management, Pruts.
They are, and as Temps has said, they can do damage to teams that are far higher in the table than Forest are. I think we can look at structures and formations, and it's nominally a 4-3-3, isn't it? But I think, as we've seen, when it becomes tentative containment, it becomes a 4-5-1, really, doesn't it, for Forest, which doesn't serve anyone with any purpose. Emmanuel Dennis hasn't come to Nottingham Forest to play as a lone number 9 by any stretch of the imagination, has he? So that decision making that Temps talks about is absolutely paramount. And if Morgan has freedom or license to do more things offensively, the good thing is, from the point of view, you're probably looking at a team that are doing exactly what the manager wants them to do, which is when you are playing a team such as Wolves, then there isn't a way at their place. You can't just go hell for leather up against them, because they've probably been stung a little bit earlier on in the season, Forest, for being that little bit more open. And I'm not saying there's a perception of a better way to lose, but if it looks like they're giving it a right go, I think there'll be that sense more of optimism that if you are going to be playing in a certain way, obviously you've got to outscore the opposition. That's a fundamental football. But if it's a 3-2 or a 4-3, or then it actually shows that Forest are capable of really creating problems going forward, and then you work on the defence accordingly. But I think, as you say, if it is about seeding possession, then it does mean that when you do get chances, as we've spoken about with Brennan or Morgan or Emmanuel Dennis up top, then decision-making is paramount. If it's a late run by Ryan into the box, then it's not allowed to be a near miss. It's got to be a goal, hasn't it? It's these fine margins. And it's funny, isn't it, the way we talk about it, we can make it sound relatively straightforward, but a team that's got the likes of Solly Marchin, Leandro Trossard, Pascal Gross can cause Forest a lot of problems. I saw them just before Graham Potter moved on against Leicester. Yes, Leicester were awful that day, but they just pulled them apart at will. So Forest have got to be very, very wary of that. And I think in games such as this, again, it's another good barometer of where they are. Brighton sat 7th in the Premier League. Established is the key word that you use there, Matt, and a template possibly for the way that Forest want to make sure that they're in the Premier League for the next few years.
I think it's interesting where Forest are at, in the sense that a lot of fans online, some are writing off the season already, Temps, and saying we're down, there's no hope. Obviously, a tough couple of games coming up against Liverpool and Arsenal. Do you give people hope that Forest can still stay up, or are you in the boat that this is destined to end in abject failure?
Well, look, first of all, the mindset of a professional sportsman is win every game, make it better next time. Failure is never fatal, success is never final, and all of those mantras. So Forest have found it tougher than they perhaps anticipated, and it would not have been part of their plans to be where they are after 10 games. The bookies, who take a cold, dispassionate look, all 20 teams, think we're odds on to go down, and things do need to change markedly if we're going to bring about a change in that perception. And that comes down to performances and then results. So, yeah, look, on the balance of probability, other teams have a better chance of staying up at the minute. But it only takes 2 successive results to turn that around, because we're a long way from adrift, and Brighton is certainly a winnable game. So I'm perhaps not as blindly optimistic as Greg Mitchell or one or two other friends of the podcast. I think that if we are going to stay up, it's going to be by a very fine margin, and will be the result of some surprise results and sorting ourselves out against the perceived weaker teams at home in particular. But when we spoke pre-season, we had ourselves on kind of 12, 13, 14 points at this stage, and they haven't materialised. And even in those games against Fulham and Brentford, where we took the lead and looked pretty strong at home, Fulham and Bournemouth, we showed a bit of a soft underbelly and let them back in the game. So lessons learned there. A run of fixtures now, which is markedly tougher than the ones that we've just come through, but a surprise result within that could bring about a kickstart to the season, and as Prut said, get us towards 17th place, which for me would be absolute nirvana.
How do you think the players are viewing it, Prutz? Because the table doesn't look pretty right now, but as Tem says, professional sportsmen should be able to see that things can change quickly if they can get these results.
Yeah, and I mean, there would have been under no illusion just how tough it was going to be. And I think it was it Steve Cook who'd said he doesn't want to go into the period of the break when the World Cup comes along with things being doom and gloom. Now, that's going to take a hell of a turnaround between now and November when we do pause. But there's the mentality. You can't stress enough just how much mentality plays a part in it, because as a collective, I think that squad's good enough to stay in the Premier League. I absolutely do. It's quite another thing to be able to get the points accrued, to be able to make sure that happens. And that then comes from, like you say, the ability to withstand pressure, because that's what top level sport is. It's stress testing every 2 or 3 days. And you mentioned Liverpool and Arsenal coming up. If you're going to hit a Liverpool buoyed by that win against Manchester City, Liverpool can tear people to shreds. They can tear the best teams in Europe to shreds. Arsenal seem to have complete about face with regards to their mentality and also their productivity. They're an awesome attacking team to watch now. So Forest have got to be very, very wary of that. And it's a fine line between being timid and saying, let's just go there not to lose. But also you've got to compete as well, take the game towards the opposition, but in a sensible manner. So the players will be under no illusions just how tough it is. They'll understand, they'll be getting debate and discourse on every single, as we said, platform that's there. It's not just the local paper anymore. It's national media. It's rolling 24-hour news. It's match of the day. It's Monday Night Football. It's all of those things. Twitter, Instagram, where everything will be poured over and discussed. And there's no hiding place. And like I said, from a human point of view and understanding possibly a modicum of what the pressure is to play in a certain division, I empathise with them. The other side of it is, it's a brutal profession. You have got to get on with it. You either swim into the choppy waters or you sink. And I'd like to think that this has got more swimmers than sinkers in the Forest dressing room.
Hopefully so. Right. Just want to spend the last 5 or 10 minutes or so talking about the changes behind the scenes last week with George Sirianos and Andy Scott leaving the recruitment department. Temps, what do you make of it? 23 signings, kind of an admission that a failure, isn't it, after such a short time? Or do we have to accept this is the way Evangelos Marinakis runs his football clubs?
Yeah, it is, and he's entitled to do that. And he has shown that he is ruthless enough to make a limitless number of changes in personnel on the field and off the field to make this thing work. And given the checks that he's signing, he's well within his rights to do that. What does it say internally? It says job security is not a factor you should be looking for if you're going to work at Forest, or indeed half the Premier League, 3/4 of the Football League. I think that there's always going to be an element of scapegoating when something like this goes wrong. But I don't dismiss the method that led to these players getting selected. As Prut said, they've been thrown together, and within that squad is every attribute that you need to survive in the Premier League. But we haven't quite got the blend right on the pitch. So I don't attach blame to the owner, because that's what goes with the territory. In an owner-operated business, and I'm fortunate enough to work for a members club where we don't have a big financier putting money in or taking money out. The responsibility is on us to perform and to make the thing work. In an owner-operated business, you've got someone at the top of the food chain who, on a whim, can pay a settlement fee to replace man A with man B. Mm-hmm. And I think in football, there's so many people seeking these jobs that rather than spending 3 years trying to get have someone come good, you can make a change in 10 minutes by summoning them to London, paying them their severance, and their replacement's often in before the ink is dry on that agreement. So I'm not surprised. Given where we are, there are always going to be consequences. I'm pleased that the consequence wasn't the removal of Steve Cooper. So in that sense, if it's bought him more time to get out of this squad what he thinks he can, then it's probably a good thing. But on a human level, I do feel for two fellas that have moved to the city, tried to do a good job for their employer, and it hasn't quite worked out. And I think you can separate the two.
What about you, Prot? So you're a player in that dressing room who's come in, and the blokes who signed you said, these are good players. They've just been binned off. Do the players bother about that or not?
No, because players are inherently selfish, and I mean that just as a fact rather than an opinion. It does perhaps suggest that, going along with Temps's point, that there is a strategy and a structure, because there would have been a school of thought from a certain era of football that if the transfers don't work, then the man who brought them in, i.e. the manager, then has to go. So this then shows that Steve's part of a structure which possibly means that he doesn't have veto on it or doesn't have the absolute last word on it. And that's by no means a denigration of the power that he's got in the football club, just a reflection basically on what it is now in that hierarchical sense of, well, these are the people that are helping make these decisions. And if there's a majority, then we're going to go this way. I think there was always, because we were in, I think you were texting me over the course of the summer, Matt, where it was almost like that rolling kind of number that kept ticking over. Oh, here's another signing, here's another signing. And that initial burst, you kind of, I think as a Forest fan, you go, yes, I mean, we're giving it a right go, that old cliche. When it gets to 20, you kind of go, well, this is amazing, but this doesn't work. It's going to look a little bit out of kilter. And then the money that's involved in it was a ballpark figure of about 150 million quid. Shows that there is a commitment from the owner to get recruits in and tool up for the Premier League. Because let's be honest, as much as, and there's that great article that you sent me, Matt, as well, and he's certainly one of life's eccentrics, isn't he? And I don't think, and again, I don't mean that in any kind of disparaging way. He's just operates in a different manner to other people, which is possibly where his success as a businessman actually comes from. So it's to back up Temps's point. For the football club belongs to the fans, of course. If we think about it in the traditional sense, why is it a big football club? Because a lot of people love it. A lot of people have followed it. It's had a lot of success. Technically, it belongs to him. That's just the way it is, and he will do with it what he sees fit. And if that means spending lots of money, having to cover the club during COVID, forking out money when no one saw what was over the hill, paying wages, operating. I don't know the far end of what it is, but you won't find many football clubs that are in the black, will you? That are kind of making money week on week. So it's an insane flight of fancy anyway to own a football club. But having got Forest back into the Premier League, which is what everyone was crying out for over 20 years, then that's where he stands as a legendary figure doing that, and he's well within his rights to make these decisions. But it doesn't, right, when you hear the news, it doesn't ultimately reflect well on the choices made for the people in charge to bring the players in. But as we've seen, as is the great debate away from football and politically now, to be seen to make a U-turn or backtrack or change your decision is now a big sign saying you're useless at your job. Now, there is an element of that in a broader scheme, but on the flip side of it is he is well within his rights to go, well, I had these people do that thing. They're now not doing what I want them to do. So as their boss, that's absolutely his prerogative to go, you're not doing the job I think that I pay you for. So sorry, this has changed. And I've come across Andy as well in the past, a fella that got a lot of time for, and he's well respected in football circles. But he'll know exactly what it's like to operate for an owner such as the one that Forest have got. And it comes with the jeopardy comes with the territory, doesn't it? That wonderful success of being a football club that's in the Premier League is at the very knife edge where things can spectacularly fall off a cliff. And it's up to the players now that are there and the manager that's been given that huge boost of a new contract to, as Temps is saying, get the chemistry right.
Probably last one on it. Temps, are you curious or worried about January now that we could have 10 in, 10 out? We're not sure who's going to be making the calls. Obviously, Evangelos Miltiades Marinakis put himself front and centre at a couple of the summer signings in Lingard, I think, and Lodi. Could things go a bit pear-shaped in January, or do we have to just wait and see and hope the right processes are put in place now, having reviewed the structure?
It's a bit like the pre-Wolves tweet. I don't think you'll quite see people personally owning transfers in January as they were in July and August. But I'll say this, there'll definitely be business in and out of the City ground in that window. I think we're already seeing now there's some players that aren't getting minutes that will be hungry for football, be that a loan or a move elsewhere. And there are deficiencies which we could potentially manage through good recruitment. So yeah, of course there'll be transfer business, and no, I don't think there'll be quite as much clamour to own individual transfers. seems a million miles away, doesn't it? But on notepads throughout the City ground already, there'll be shortlists of names of people we want to get in the club to improve the defence, the midfield, and the strike force. And I think a centre forward would be top of that list.
Just to ask a question of you both here, because he was that kind of marquee signing, Jesse Lingard, what has he done since he's been there?
Well, he hasn't had the minutes or the backing, has he, Matt, to be considered a star man for Forest. Will certainly be amongst the higher earners. But you see the flashes of quality that suggest if he had 90 minutes for 5 games in a row, he'd make something happen. Even when he came on against Wolves, he doesn't seem to force it, Jesse. Even when he's getting 20 minutes, 30 minutes, he plays his own game and he's lively on the ball. He's composed. He's often coming on where we're trying to change it, where we find ourselves behind and need to take more risks. And he's an exciting player. But what he's been a victim of is that you can't accommodate seemingly Gibbs, White, Lingard and Johnson in the team at the same time. And in the games that we've done that, it's come unstuck, particularly because we found ourselves under pressure. We've reverted to the long ball, and none of those three have been particularly adept at controlling it, holding it up and bringing others into play. So we've got 3 players of a relatively similar profile vying for minutes, and he's been the one that's been seen as expendable.
Yeah, I think it's seen flashes on, like Temp says. I think I agree with everything you said. I got the impression before the Leicester game, Cooper might have laid the challenge out to him. He went public saying, now's the time we need to see more from you. And he was horrible in the Leicester game. And that has kind of overridden the conversation around him, which should be a bit more nuanced, and that he's done bits, but he hasn't really delivered. I just wonder if maybe the Brighton game's a good time to put him in and see what he can do. It might be his kind of game against that kind of Brighton team where they're going to dominate the ball, and maybe Lingard can just pick a pass or something. It's the question again, as we said earlier, is who's he come in for? Do you take out Brennan, who's not playing well, and then you back to the same conundrum of do Gibbs, White, Dennis and Lingard make a good front three? It's the same conversation we had last time you were on Prutz after that Spurs game. Yeah. Awoniyi hasn't really... I mean, I still think Awoniyi might be the best solution as that spearhead, but he hasn't played well. As Temp said again, in January, I think maybe that number 9 is the top priority and see what he can do there. I'm not sure. What do you think from afar of Lingard then, Prutz? Is he looking like a flop?
Again, it's. I mean, flop's a big word. It's not. It's only 4 letters. But the there's an expectation, obviously, with an established name such as that. And people reference his time at West Ham, which I think there's a small demographic that forget that was the season before last, which in football terms is a lifetime, really. I think you're right. Whether it's a case of either Morgan or Brennan making way for Jesse Lingard to come into the side, then that's where you would think he would fit. Whether he's doing enough in these little passages of time on the pitch to kind of theoretically be banging on the manager's door is another thing altogether. But again, I'm trying to judge it in a non-cynical way. Or sometimes you can get caught up in looking at it like a fan, which is he'll be on X amount of money a week. Whether reports that you read vary from like £100,000 kind of spectrum, doesn't it? Which then doesn't mean you've got to take out of it, because footballers' wages are astronomical and arbitrary and pulled out the clouds and all that. So to judge a player on that is a bit wide of the mark. You've got to judge him on his approach and his ability to perform in a football match. And tactically and technically, he's a very, very good footballer. And maybe it goes along with what Temps is saying, the fact that he's not been on the pitch for long enough to be able to make that kind of absolute kind of opinion on it. Jury's still out, I think. Not him as a footballer, because he's a good footballer. I think the jury is still well and truly out on him as a Forest player because of the little impact that he's had so far. But if you're looking at signings that have had a little impact, you can group about 15 of them together with that. Okay, you can also judge players that played all last season that have made a not as big as impacts as they would have liked. I think that kind of goes without saying when you see a team that's in the position that they're in. Fundamentally, across the board, performances haven't been there.
I can follow Cooper's logic though, because he's inking in Morgan Gibbs-White to play. Along with that, he needs a spearhead striker. Plan A was our need, didn't quite work. Dennis is having a go now, and Surridge is getting time off the bench. So it's becoming a choice in this system, probably between Lingard and Johnson. And objectively, he thinks Brennan offers more of an all-round threat at this moment in time. So it'll be interesting to see if that balance does tip, and if we do see Jesse get a start with Brennan asked to make a difference off the bench rather than the other way around, which is what we're seeing at the minute. So I think that's probably becoming more of a marginal call, where it probably was obvious to him 3-4 weeks ago. He might just be revisiting that one sometime soon.
Last thing on him as well, the other thing that clouded supporters' perceptions of him is he's made two kind of low percentage but high profile errors. And against Bournemouth, he gave the ball away and Billing pinged one in from 30 yards. And against Leicester, he shinned one and Maddison scored from outside the box. And, 9 times out of 10, you get away with that. Although in the Premier League, we're seeing, 0 times out of 10, you get away with it for Forest. But it's maybe a little unfortunate for Lingard, but he does need to step up. I do think we need to see more from him. 50 minutes in, we'll just finish there. But as usual, give people a chance of a last word. Temps, anything you want to say or plug?
No, nothing to plug now. We gave my beer festival a good caning, didn't we, over the past 4 or 5 weeks? We'll leave that one alone. I was just going to mention, I was lucky enough to follow Luke Fletcher around the pitch on at the last game. He was.
How did you get on the? I'm going to interject there. How did you end up on the pitch?
I was his hype man / cameraman, just recording it for posterity.
I love that.
But also, the trophy weighs 35 kilos, and he couldn't manage it on his own. But what made me giggle was some fella, Matt was ribbing me on social media, and some fella tracked us down. So I didn't know who that lad was. I just presumed it was Sam Surridge's dad, which made me giggle. So yeah, cheers for that.
No, I'm glad you got on the City Ground pitch. 2 of us have graced the City Ground pitch now, then Prutz as well.
Great. one of us has soiled it, the other one's graced it. It's quite the experience, isn't it? Once you're on there, and I mean the pitch now, it's immaculate. But I think what we've seen as well, when it's been absolutely at its best, it's been a wonderful place to watch a game of football, and hopefully there's part of that that'll help see them over the line. I mean, the line's a long, long way away, isn't it? It's a marathon that has to be hit at full tilt and full sprint. But I'm just intrigued to kind of see the broad kind of opinion on what fans have found it like being back in the Premier League, because like I said, a lot of things are the same, but a lot of things it's like a different universe, isn't it? When you look at the teams that everyone's coming up against, and the accessibility and the pressure and the spotlight on it, it's a wonderful thing. I just hope that by the time it comes around, after we've been to Qatar, we come back, we've got January transfer window, we've got the rest of the season. By May, they've clambered to safety.
Yeah, I've played on the City Ground pitch, Matt. I should mention this. We had an ill-tempered game against the Forest staff. I think there were about 4 yellow cards. We nicked it 3-2. It was one of the most physical games of football I've ever played in.
And did you have any ringers?
Yeah, we did have a couple of ringers. We had Mark Clifford playing centre mid, ex-Boston United, and Paul Hart's lad Jamie was up front throwing elbows around. Jamie? Yeah, he's just an absolute Andy Carroll character.
Yeah.
Just, we would turn up for this friendly, and he gave this kind of Stuart Pearce speech beforehand about, we weren't going to take any backward steps. And he was, first into battle, and he won us the game. So it quickly degenerated from the end of season staff friendly into the FA Cup final, and we were all flying in. It was good fun. I wanted to mention as well that I played football with John Thompson last week in the Veterans League, and he's still got it. He's fit as a fiddle, isn't he? He's a personal trainer, so I think he was fresh off 6 sessions with the good and the great from Loudon Village, who he'd been doing yoga and 5Ks with, and still turned up and ran all day. So Prutz, open invitation if you need a game on a Sunday afternoon.
Oh my God, yeah, to go and just slob my way around the pit. I remember, because he had a few injuries when I was there, Tom. It was a couple of quite serious ones from what I remember. And there was one stage where I think he was working with Gary Fleming, the physio, and there was it felt like for a period of time, all you saw was Tomo just doing laps of this pitch. And it was a terrifically and frighteningly fit fella. and showed real kind of fortitude because he had that facial injury as well, didn't he? Which was quite a serious one. I think he quite severely broke his nose, and there was cheekbone damage and all that. And another lad and of a certain generation of the Irish lads that you'd meet in the digs, who there was an absolute cabal of them when we joined in the late 90s. They were more Scottish, Irish, and continentals than there were us English lads. So they were a great bunch, and to see him cracking on doing that, I think is fantastic.
Last thing I was going to say, just picking on what you said, Prots, there's an interesting split in the camp, I think, now of Forest fans between the happy to be here, just enjoy it brigade, and also the cutthroat, win at all costs, do what you've got to do, sack everyone, sack the manager brigade. So
not right, get rid of him.
We'll see how that develops. Interesting, but I think people are probably getting more of the win at all costs camp at the moment, but interesting if they can get a result at Brighton might, as we say, change everything. I think we'll leave it there. Thanks to everyone who's watched along. No comments to bring up this week because this is a recorded only one because my kids are terrorizing the house downstairs. So I'll see if they haven't set fire to everything when I get down. But
Mate, you do know what they say, that there's no bad kids, there's only bad parents. So you can't keep pointing the finger, mate. Come on.
I've got glitter tattoos on my hand. I said to you earlier, I built a dinosaur fighting arena this morning. I've had
and you're wearing a tutu, which is lovely, but no one's seen that from the waist down, have they?
I'm still wearing my pajamas.
My God, Tim, does he need an intervention? Come on, what on earth?
Now you've got these full-length studios at Sky Sports. Now I was convinced for years that you boys were smart up top, wearing shorts under the desk. Now we've got this wide angle. We know you have to get togged up every week.
Remember Rob McCaffrey on? He used to do You're on Sky Sports. There was apparently because the suit jacket, from what I heard, might be an urban myth, just used to iron the front bit, so the bit of the shirt that you could see, and then maybe a pair of jeans or a pair of shorts under the desk, which is the magic of TV, you see. But now it's a fashion show, isn't it? If you're not wearing a certain thing, it's not even bothered. I mean, what's he wearing?
True. You're sponsored, aren't you? You've got all sorts of merchandise deals. That's not temps.
CNA, Georgia Asda, all the ones.
I'd like to see a Prutz range on boohooman.com to rival Deli Alley.
Oh, really? Yeah, can you imagine? Yeah. I remember there was a picture that got put up. I think it was of Calvin Phillips that had rocked up to somebody's house wearing what looked like the bottom end of a Scooby-Doo fancy dress outfit, but probably cost more than my first car. So once you're in your 40s, anything that's related to fashion, you just got to dial it down, play it simple, make it slimming, and keep your mouth shut.
Well, only two of us are in our 40s on this panel. Temps haven't got there yet. Have you? You're not 40 yet, are you?
Not quite, mate. Sneaking up the rails.
Right, we'll leave it there. I'm not sure what the plan is the rest of the week. As mentioned, childcare.
What with your kids, or?
I'm definitely not sure what's happening
your kids, Matt. Sort them out.
I'm not sure what's happening with the podcast after the Brighton game because of childcare and my rota and Temps. You've got childcare and other issues with Greg and Mikey struggling as well. So we might not be back. We might be back later in the week for a short episode. But in the meantime, do have a good week. Prutz, when's your Warnock podcast out?
We're recording a few this week, and then when I get told, I'll be able to tell you. We've done a pilot, which seemed to be okay. So yeah, watch this space.
Excellent.
Can I give you I know we're dragging on here. Can I give you a question for Warnock?
Yes,
there was a time when he'd kind of shook hands, hadn't he, on becoming the Forest gaffer, and he somehow managed to sign Lee Peltier for Forest, and then ultimately didn't sign the contract himself. And this poor lad was stranded at Forest, thinking he was going to walk in as Warnock's man on the inside and start every week. So I'd just like to know the timeline of how he managed to sign a player for Forest without ever actually being the Forest gaffer.
I'll ask him. And let's not weep too much for Lee Peltier, because I think Neil's taken him to several places and made him a very good living and a career off the back of that. So he's probably been dumped in worse places, let's be honest.
Right, this has been the longest last 10 minutes of the podcast I think we've done.
You're in charge, mate. You've got to wrap this up. So when you're the presenter, you've got to wrap it up. Don't let him waffle on. If this is just broken biscuits, wrap it up. It's your show.
This is gold. This is why we're shortlisted for an award. So yeah, don't worry. We're not going to win it, but we're shortlisted for it, which I'll take.
And you put yourself in it, but it's fine. We won't tell anyone that. It's all right.
I did put us in it, but we did make that shortlist. So that's fine. That's fine. Right, and lots of people voted for us, which we appreciate. So we will definitely leave it there. We'll be back this time next week, or perhaps later in the week. In the meantime, enjoy the game against Brighton, and hopefully Forest get a result. And we shall see you soon.